Hello, and welcome to the next lecture in the Wilderness First Aid for Paragliding class. In this lecture, we're going to go over evacuation planning, specifically some steps you can take to make contingency plans in case someone gets hurt or someone gets lost, and ways just to make sure that you have all your ducks in a row before something goes bad. There's a pretty short lecture. There's some supplemental material along with this lecture that I'll also send out. There are some spreadsheets that I've found very useful in planning all sorts of adventures, from alpine climbs to paraglides to big runs in the mountains. And I think they're pretty universal. My hope with this lecture is to start a paradigm shift within our paragliding community, in which when we go fly with people, I think we should have contact info for everyone we're flying with, their emergency contact info, their in-reach link. Oftentimes I see like a bunch of people show up on launch, talk on the telegram, get stoked, everyone goes and flies, and then when they land, they're like, oh, how many people did we have? You don't really have any accountability for someone. So maybe not nannying everyone, but a little more knowledge of what's going on, I think would be a lot safer. Our standard disclaimer. So when we talk about evacuation planning steps, I break it down into pre-planning, right? Kind of figuring out what's going on, and then the actual planning itself. So pre-planning is stuff like researching insurance, transportation ideas, what kind of medical kits you need, hospitals nearby, and then sitting down to actually make a plan. So you're going to make this plan, you're going to share your plan, you're going to spell out the plan to everyone so people who even aren't pilots can follow it. You're going to hopefully keep a complete group list. You should know who you're flying with. That's a lot safer, and it helps us keep accountability for everyone, right? During one of the incidents here in the fall when a pilot crashed, as we're helping get that pilot back to the car, there was a question as to whether we had actually accounted for all of our pilots. We kind of heard someone yelling. It was a weird day in the air, and we had some time where we weren't sure if we actually knew everyone was down safe. And that's a pretty terrible feeling, right? Within your planning, you want to include your route plan and times, just like a general idea. Clearly, we don't have a whole lot of control over that, right? And then, your plan for contingency is both along your route and along kind of your whole trip. Insurance has been a hot topic recently. I have a hard time keeping up with all the changes in insurance. The best resource that I have found is Gavin's Cloud Based Mayhem podcast. He's done some episodes where they've talked about insurance, and I think there was one with Bianca where they talked about it quite a bit, and then he made an update in the next one. I think that's the best resource out there right now, and they've done all the legwork. I would listen to what they have to say. There's some other good options like the American Alpine Club, the Divers Alert Network, and Global Rescue, but you need to very specifically look into insurance plans, especially when you're traveling abroad, to make sure they cover quote unquote extreme sports, to look at what kind of evacuation insurance you have that'll get you back to the States, because oftentimes it takes a very specialized aircraft and air crew and is exorbitantly expensive, right? You need to see if your insurance company will prepay for treatment, because a lot of hospitals in developing countries, if you're traveling, won't provide treatment for you unless there's some payment up front. Okay. So if you guys have questions about insurance specifically, I'm happy to help walk you through it based on my knowledge. I've done quite a bit of austere medical work where we've evacuated people from foreign countries back to the US, both on the civilian side and the military side, and have a pretty good idea of at least the needs that you'll have if you're ever in that situation. When you're pre-planning, you want to start thinking about your transportation. So if you have a retrieve driver, can that retrieve driver also provide some medical support? Is the retrieve car big enough if you need to transport someone that can't sit up, that has to lay flat? What kind of first aid kits are in your retrieve car? What kind of first aid kits does each pilot in the group have? You don't have to carry a very large first aid kit to have something that's effective, especially when you start compiling everyone's first aid kits into one, right? But the retrieve car is the perfect place to put a bigger kit with a lot more stuff. This is what we do. I'm the medical director for the Chilean Open and the U.S. Open for paragliding, working with Maddie Senior. And one of our big pushes this year is making sure that all the retrieve drivers have first aid training, and that each retrieve car has a solid first aid kit, right? Within that first aid kit, do you have a backup? Do you know what's going on? Do you have a backup transportation mode, right? What local options are available? After you crash is not the time to be searching for a hospital. You need to know what hospitals are around you and what your medical options are before bad things happen, especially given that we participate in a sport that a lot of times drops us in places without a whole lot of cell coverage, right? And then once you identify these options that are available to you, you need to ask yourself, how are you going to contact them? Is your phone going to work out there? Are you going to be relying on just some local's phone? Are you actually going to be able to get through to someone via your inReach? You need to start using your imagination to explore all of these options before bad things happen. Once bad things happen, it's too late. Your medical kit, right? What goes where? A truck kit can be a lot bigger than a personal kit. My personal kit fits in a small fanny pack, right? I keep it in, either my, the little kind of cockpit pouch area in my pod, or like, a little kit on the back of my front mount reserve if it's my hike and fly kit, right? And we'll walk through like what should go in a truck kit and what should go in a personal kit as you go through this course. Start making notes of what you find useful in this course so that you can start planning your own first aid kit, right? If you're talking about a longer trip where people might need, their typical chronic day-to-day medications, you should carry twice as much medications as you would normally need, and those need to be split up so they're never in the same place, right? In case you lose one bag. Specific regions have specific needs as far as things like malaria prophylaxis, diarrhea prophylaxis, right? Whether there's venomous animals in there. A good travel doc can help you plan for that. I can help you plan for that after this course, right? But it's knowledge that you need to have before you get in country. And then know who has what. Know who have a basic idea of the first aid kits, the medicines, the knowledge that everyone in your group has. And if you have a retrieve driver or a truck, know what's in that truck. Write it down. Write down where those medications are so that you don't have to be trying to remember it when you're in a stressful situation. With regards to hospitals, right? Try to discover what the local medical resources are, right? And write this down. Make sure everyone in the group has a small copy of this, right? I prefer a small index card. I'm always worried about crashing on my phone and breaking it, or my phone dying, even though I carry an extra battery, right? Questions you need to ask yourself when you're looking into these hospitals, right? And sometimes I'll call them ahead of time, right? Do they speak English? And if not, do you speak the local language? What services do they have available? Just because they're a hospital doesn't mean they have a surgeon, doesn't mean they have an orthopedic surgeon or even provide emergency care, right? Is that hospital actually open? When we pre-plan these trips for our military folks, or for climbing trips that I help manage medically, there's a lot of hospitals that I find online that I call them and they're closed. So you need to look into that ahead of time and know their hours. Okay. And then predetermine which hospital you're going to use for specific situations, right? As well as specific areas. Cognitively deload that and have a plan written down that everyone has so that you don't have to make that decision. That's one way to easily shorten that OODA loop, right? Pre-make that decision. So when you make your plan, you spell out your plan, you share your plan, right? I share it with everyone in my group plus someone dependable back home, right? Who's not flying that day. So I'll send out some examples, right? There's a global rescue plan that I really like that I've used in the past. And then Jared Campbell, who's a kind of mountain sports dude in Salt Lake City and Park City, who's done some really epic runs and climbs and kayaks. And he has this wonderful planning spreadsheet that I really like to use. Right. After you share your plan, you spell out your plan, keep a complete group list, know who you should be expecting, when and where, right? And have a general idea of their plan. And then plan for contingencies along your route. If I'm planning the next sea route, right, I want to know, common spots I'm going to bomb out, right, which happens more often than I care to admit, and then what I'm going to do for medical care, right, or just resources in those spots. I will send out some examples with the recording for this email so you can page through them. Look through them. Let me know if you have any questions, and we can do some practice as you get closer. And I'm hoping that you guys actually go through one of these and bring one of these pre-filled out for either a hypothetical trip you're taking or a real trip you're taking, and bring them this weekend so we can go over them together. I appreciate your attention, and that's the end of the planning lecture.